Hello, this is Louise from Flaming Divine Astrology, and this is the 2026 year forecast of what's to come in 2026. Happy New Year! Here we are about to start the new year. I'm going to try and keep this video as concise and succinct as I could possibly can. Obviously, there's going to be a lot to cover in an entire year, but yeah, I'm going to try and keep it as quick as I can, hopefully within an hour or so. I'm going to break it down month by month, and the chapters will be in either the notes or the comments somewhere. So if you need to come back at a different, like later in the year, just to look at a couple of months, see what's coming up for those months, you can come back quite quickly. Just get to where you want to in the video, and that should help you. So yeah, let's get started looking at it month by month, starting with January. Cheers. Happy New Year. I have already done a January forecast. If you look on my channel, you'll probably find it. So I'm going to keep this extra short. If you want more details, you can look there in that video. So January, we have a very powerful super full moon in Cancer, a place where the moon is very much at home. This gives the moon more power. So it enhances intuition, instinct, that sort of gut feeling, but it also is quite nurturing, mothering. It's very protective of home and family, but with it being a full moon, this is about coming to a completion of this time with the home and the family, and having to sort of return back to work, earning money, and the responsibility of providing. There's a kind of friction between the two. That's on the 3rd of January, and very much starts the month off with this sort of building of this like return to work, attention, energy. We also have right at the very start of the month of January, Mercury square to Neptune, which can be a little bit, it can be very, because Mercury at that point is in the last degree of Sagittarius and Neptune will be in the last degree of Pisces. It kind of gives it a very sort of spiritual awakening kind of energy to it. However, it can be quite chaotic. It can bring about arguments and wars to do with religious beliefs and, issues around that. So as we move forward, we then have this very, very, very powerful manifestation portal between the 6th and the 10th, really. But I mean, the 8th, the 9th, 10th, very, very strongly with the energy of the divine feminine, the divine masculine coming together as Mars and Venus conjunct. What we must remember is that this is a transit that happens every 2 years. Venus and Mars come together. However, it's only once every 6.5 years that the Sun is also in with that conjunction. This year is one of those years. Adding to that, on the axis of the Capricorn, and where this conjunction is happening in Capricorn, but on the axis of Capricorn to Cancer, where the full moon's just occurred, we also have this opposition, and so therefore an alignment with Jupiter, blessing this time of manifestation, of creation. This can make or break relationships, very much so. This can be very much about taking action towards your desires, your passions. So this is quite a significant energy, and it will play out for the next 6.5 years. And that's important to remember. So then as we move through the month, it gets very, very busy with the personal planets and the Sun opposing this Jupiter energy, which just means there's going to be like a lot of rushing around, a lot of conflict and stuff like that, with trying to do this and trying to do that and rushing about. But then it's towards the end of January where the planets and the Sun, so the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars, they all move into the sign of Aquarius, from Capricorn to Aquarius. It brings a shift. Also, we have this new moon on the 18th. I forgot to mention, on the 18th of January, there's a new moon in Capricorn. Now, this occurs on the same day as Mars and Mercury come together. This can be very assertive and powerful, like planning, but it's quite dominant and it's quite feisty and quite aggressive in nature in terms of communication and connections. There's a dominating force sometimes with this sort of energy. So this happens on the day of the new moon. And now this is the last new moon before the next new moon will be a solar eclipse in February. So this really does open up the eclipse season energy. And then we get to this whole point where the planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, move into Aquarius. And at this point, they come in connection to Pluto. Now, this is going to bring up something that's been hidden. It could bring up corruption, exploitation, manipulation. It's going to be quite transformative in how it plays out over the eclipse season. This is going to be sort of like life-changing for some people. If it hits on their natal charts in certain ways, this is really transformative energy. With this Pluto and the personal planets, this really brings up something that's been hidden, some hidden secrets, some scandals. There can be some financial scams with this Venus and Pluto as well. There could be a lot going on with this. So it's best probably not to speculate too much, but this really does open up this whole eclipse season energy. So we can expect quite a big, I think, eclipse season that's going to come. Okay, so on the 26th of January, getting towards the end of January, we have Neptune moving into Aries. Now, Neptune did move into Aries last year for a few months and then retrograded back into Pisces. Neptune will stay within a sign usually for around about 14 years. So it's going to be in Aries now for a long time to come. And this is the final and complete ingress of Neptune into Aries. This can bring, so I think last summer, if you think back to last summer, what happened when Neptune moved into Aries, it was very hot and dry, for one. There was a sense of lots of issues around wars. This could be about the seas heating up and causing problems with global warming. Stuff like that could be highlighted. When Neptune is in Aries, there tends to be periods of times when there's conscription and people are called to fight for their country. There tends to be a glorification of wars, which hopefully we won't see this time round. But it can also sort of like dissolve wars, make them sort of fizzle out. So it'll be interesting how it plays out. We then have Mercury and Venus coming into a conjunction. Now this happens numerous times as well through February and March because the speed of Mercury beginning to slow down for its retrograde, which will take place next month. This can tend to be about financial planning and budgeting. It can be about, it can be quite complementary with Venus and Mercury. There's usually like a little bit of flirtation with that, depending on what sign it is in. This time it will happen in the sign of Aquarius. Excuse me. So Aquarius is about, it can be online. It could be about cyber banking, cryptocurrencies, that kind of thing, most definitely. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out through the also the eclipse season, which is coming in February, and so Could there be some sort of cyber attacks or issues around money, trade? This could bring up trade deals. The trade tariffs that came up last year could sort of come back up again. And so, yeah, this is going to be interesting how it plays out over the January, February, March period. Okay, moving on into February. And this is going to start, the month literally starts with a full moon in Leo. Okay, so full moons are about completion, things coming to an end. It can be about recognition and achievement also. This happens at 13 degrees of Leo. Leo can represent leaders. And so this could bring about an end to leadership. This could be about the achievement of a leader, and it could sort of celebrate a leader in some way. We also have Mars and Venus still quite close to this full moon. And there's a few other things happening around this full moon, which I'll probably do a separate video about because I want to keep this quite short. Right then, so Uranus goes direct on the 4th of February. And this is likely to bring up, it happens at 27 degrees of Taurus. It's likely to bring up some seismic activity, big storms, severe weather events, typical Uranus style things. So probably like issues around airports, maybe nuclear, news about nuclear things, airports, flights, aerospace, all sorts of things. And at the same time, or the next day, on the 5th of February, Mercury squares Uranus. Mercury then moves into Pisces. So this once again brings up potential for a big storm, severe winds, so hurricanes, that kind of thing. This could also be about communication, connections, technology, and also like the airports, stuff like that. And Venus will also square Uranus around the same time. I think it's like on the 6th or the 8th or something. So with Venus then squaring Uranus, this could pose things with finances, shocks around money, banking, trade, this kind of thing. Venus also moves into Pisces on the 10th of February. Venus in Pisces is really quite a nice energy. It's very luxurious. It loves the arts. It's very artistic. It's kind of dreamy. You could kind of just like lose track of time and just be in this like very relaxing, almost like meditative, arty, creative, sort of dreamy like energy. Okay, so then on the 11th of February, Mercury begins its pre-retrograde shadow at 8 degrees of Pisces. And so we're really getting into that energy of just Mercury retrograde things, which are kind of, it's not so bad, it's just annoyances. It's like silly things going wrong, tech playing up, cars not doing what they should, traffic issues, transport problems, all sorts of like systems going down. This will also happen conjunct the North Node, and as I've already said, we're already into this eclipse season. So although it's just a Mercury retrograde pre-shadow period, there is potential that it could be really quite problematic or cause a little bit of havoc to day-to-day life and things. Mercury conjunct the North Node, I would suggest like pay attention to communications, connections, conversations, plans, ideas that come into your mind around this time. There's something significant coming up. Maybe there's an idea that you've had in the past and then you never did anything about it, with it being in this retrograde shadow. This time it's saying like, come on, this is really something you got to do for the future. This is a plan you've really got to work hard on. So then on the 14th of February, which is Valentine's Day, Saturn finally moves into Aries as well. So this then brings the ever nearing conjunction with Saturn and Neptune as well, both now in Aries. Saturn in Aries, it's quite like militant in a way. So like Aries can be quite strong, independent, assertive. Saturn is also about rules, regulations. So this is an energy that is going to be, it's going to get things done, I would say, over the next couple of years, because Saturn remains in sign for 2 years-ish. So Saturn in Aries, yeah, I think it's going to be, it's going to get things done. It's going to be very much about regulations, self-regulation to some extent, because Aries can be about self. So self-regulation, being quite strict, and self-discipline as well. So yeah, it's a big one. Okay, so on the 16th of February, the Sun squares Uranus and Mercury trines Jupiter at the same time. So this is a lot of information coming in, a lot of action needed to be taken around maybe protecting home, family, country boundaries. Sun square Uranus can be about a leader, a shocking event regarding this leader. This could be like Sun, power, vitality. Uranus can be nuclear. I hate to say that, but this is going to be likely to be very much about solar flares. It's going to likely be about seismic activity, possibly volcanic, I would say, with the Sun Uranus going on. This could bring about issues with technology, most definitely, and aerospace, airports, that kind of thing. So on the 17th, and the 17th is going to be quite a big day because we have this annular solar eclipse. So this happens the day after this square, like Sun square Uranus. So the moon would also be in the similar position. So the moon's going to square Uranus too. This seems a bit of a tricky eclipse, not going to lie. It's also at 28 degrees of Aquarius, which this is going to be quite foretelling of what is to come later in the year and also through next year, because at the moment the nodes are in Pisces and Virgo. By July they're going to move signs to Leo and Aquarius axis. We have to remember that the lunar nodes only change once every 18 months, and they will remain then in that eclipse cycle for the next 18 months. This is foretelling of what is to come over the next eclipse in August, and also beyond, like next year. So it's a big one. We also start the year of the fire horse, and they have the whole, with this new moon, we have the Lunar New Year begins. So the year of the fire horse, everyone's saying, oh, this is going to be fabulous, forward motion, things going forward, freedom, horses are about freedom. We also have to remember that, like, they can be a bit warlike. They're used in war in the past. The Trojan War, I think, was started by, like the gift horse. Never look a gift horse in the mouth. And fire is quite dangerous in itself. It's destructive. So this is going to really stampede its way through the rest of 2026, potentially a little bit destructively. Very creative energy, possibly, and there's going to be a lot of freedom and independence, whether you want it or not. It's almost like self-reliance will become very important in what is to come over 2026. Okay, so on the 17th and the time of this annular eclipse, solar eclipse, the new moon, on the 17th, there's also Venus conjunct the North Node. Now, this to me would suggest there's something financial going on. This can very much be about relationships. So this is going to be interesting how it plays out. I think there's going to be a lot of relationships sort of break down at the start of this year, ready to find, like deeper connections, soulmates, twin flames, all that kind of stuff. I think could end up being a thing for this year. Who knows? Okay, so the sun enters Pisces on the 18th, the following day. To be honest, the sun isn't in a great place in Aquarius nor Pisces. Particularly in Aquarius, it's in detriment. So moving into Pisces, the sun, it'll probably improve things a little bit for power, control, leadership. But yeah, it's still a little bit, I want to say like nebulous. Like there's nothing very grounded with it. It's kind of confusing, going back and forth over things. There's no boundaries. It's a bit concerning. Okay, so then on the 20th of February, we have this big, massive Saturn-Neptune conjunction that people have been talking about since last year. I'm almost sick of hearing about it, but obviously I'm not because I love astrology. So Saturn-Neptune, this conjunction is exact this time round. Last year they got very close, and then Saturn went retrograde, and they didn't quite come exactly conjunct. So this conjunction will happen usually around about every 36 years. The last time it was exact was in 1989. So this can have big effects on, it's kind of like a dissolving of boundaries, a dissolving of barriers. The Berlin Wall was taken down at the time of the conjunction previously in 1989. This can be about wars at sea, I think also. There can be restrictions and things around sea, who owns the seas, boundaries of countries and things like that could become an issue. There tends to be links to Russia and Russian politics regarding Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. So this is going to be quite a significant and very telling moment. It starts a new synodic cycle of the next 36 years. So that's quite important. But the key thing is, this is happening at the very first degree of the zodiac. It's as Saturn has just moved into Aries, Neptune's in Aries, and it's at this 0 degrees of Aries. So this seems to be quite significant in starting a new cycle, something beginning over. This could suggest like a new period in time. So yeah, this is very significant for that. I'll probably do another video about it nearer the time. Who knows? But this is a very significant month, with it coming literally just a few days after this big eclipse. I think it's quite significant, and I think this could suggest that the eclipse is obviously in Leo, Aquarius axis of eclipses. It's going to have implications on leaders, world leaders, but to me this suggests it could even be Putin, it could be Trump, because obviously the eclipse in August, which we'll get to, will sit right on his ascendant, but this could be linked to Putin as well. Okay, so we then have on the 22nd of February, finally, something really nice and positive. We have got Venus in Pisces at 15 degrees, so right in the middle. So this is quite important. That mid degree, and it's trine to Jupiter in Cancer. So it's a water trine. So this is going to have a very emotional, dreamy, very loved up. It's almost like a first date, you know, when you have like those really exciting first, like you fall in love. It's like it kind of has this sort of lovey, over the top, romantic, dreamy, emotional, like, I don't know, it's kind of fabulous energy on that day. So it'll be interesting how that plays out in light of everything else that's happened around that time. But yeah, this whole Venus trine Jupiter 22nd of February could be a nice day. Okay, so on the 26th of February, Mercury goes retrograde and it conjuncts with Venus once more. So once again, we have this whole Mercury Venus, and I mean January ended with this Mercury Venus conjunction. It then happens again as Mercury goes retrograde, but then a few days later on the 28th, Venus conjuncts Mercury again because they're so close to each other. They're changing speed, they're changing direction, so they then come together again the third time, but then they're going to come together again even more. Possibly, I'm just thinking, as Mercury comes out of retrograde, will they meet again? I can't think. Maybe Venus will have already moved on by then, so maybe not. But yeah, there's this Venus conjunct Mercury thing going on. Let's hope that it's like nice, like it's complementary energy. Could be finances, could be budgeting issues, banking issues. Who knows? So on the 27th, Sun conjunct North Node, and also Mars squares Uranus. This is quite fated for a world leader, isn't it? Mars square Uranus would be quite shocking. It could be an operation, it could be nuclear, could be a lot of things really, but it's not looking good. It would be a bit of a concern, I think, for world leaders. Okay, so then we're moving into March. Now, as soon as we enter March, Mars moves into Pisces, and then we have on the 3rd of March the total lunar eclipse. So it's a full moon eclipse this time, and it's 12 degrees of Virgo. This is going to bring endings because this is beginning to close off the Pisces Virgo axis eclipse season from the last couple of years, really, that's been playing out since sort of late 2024 and through 2025. This is going to be possibly around healthcare. It could be about healthcare with it being in a Virgo Pisces axis. It can be to do with spirituality with it being on that Pisces Virgo axis. It can be about finances and just sort of like accountability. There's a sense of accountability. Something needs to be more accountable. So with the moon in Virgo, the sun in Pisces, Pisces can be, you know, it's the last sign of the zodiac. It's kind of the ending. It's the death, the meditative state, recovering, health issues can come up for a particular leader, but it could just bring an ending. Like this year really does bring some leaders to an end, but particularly when we get towards I would say next year, and also the August eclipse season more so. We also have on the 4th of March, Venus will sextile Uranus. So there's some sort of financial opportunity. There's something new. There could be a change in how we use currency. There's something about currency online crypto, systems, to do with financial banking, maybe. Something changes. There's something that changes around that that lunar eclipse. So on the 5th, the Sun is trine Jupiter and Venus begins to move into Aries. Well, Venus in Aries is obviously detrimented. It's not in a very good place for Venus to be. It's ruled traditionally by Mars. The Sun trine to Jupiter is going to really highlight a world leader. And their achievements, the things they've done. So it can be about achievements of a world leader, things they've done, a lot of action from a world leader, something that's been started by power, control. It could be about the family of the world leader. So, for example, like a memorial, if there has been a loss. Mercury is then conjunct the Sun on the 7th, and Venus is conjunct Neptune. So this does bring some, definitely some issues around trade tariffs. The whole Trump tariff seems to come up with this. With Venus conjunct Neptune, there's some confusion around the currencies and the value of money, the value of things and items. And then Venus also conjunct Saturn on the next day on the 8th. So this kind of restricts, in some way, the restricts money, budgets. It is about budgeting, because Saturn is about like organising money. It is about taking charge, being accountable. There's something about accountability coming up here. Mercury trines Jupiter, and on the 10th Venus is sextile to Pluto. So this is just like I think just with this whole eclipse, and then these things, there's something to do with finances, there's something to do with communications, connections, trade, all sorts of issues going on there. On the 11th of March, Jupiter goes direct, and so for most people this will be a really, really great thing. When Jupiter began its retrograde in 2025, like towards the end, I think it was like late November, maybe December. It's a really great Jupiter in retrograde is really great for those who are obviously born with Jupiter in retrograde in their natal chart, so that it's their native, how Jupiter is. These tend to be people who have to make their own luck in life. They have to get out there. They have to set up their own businesses because they can't find the jobs. They can't find the opportunities that they need. The opportunities don't come to them. People would rather give the opportunities to other people. And so when Jupiter then goes direct again, this means that the opportunities return. People who have been like looking for work or looking for houses, partners, whatever it is that you've been looking for, there's more chances of finding it once Jupiter goes direct, if you're somebody who was born with a normal Jupiter direct. So that's interesting. It'll be at 15 degrees Cancer, so that Jupiter changes in June. Okay, so the 13th, Mars is conjunct the North Node, and so this is about action and forward motion and in the future, and there's some sort of destiny here. What we're destined to do, what we're destined to take action towards. The 15th, Mars is conjunct to Mercury, so there's a conversation. This is going to be like we've said in the previous month, when Mars, Mercury come together. It's very assertive, very direct communication. It can come across as quite aggressive and sharp and dominating in some ways. However, with Mars in Pisces this time round, that changes it very much so. It softens it. This could be about religion in war zones and the part that it's played. But yeah, this seems to be a more possibly positive if you're really wanting to like create something, take action, create something, speak out, say, do something, because it feels a little bit less harsh, a little bit less aggressive, and more kind of easygoing, like a bit more easygoing, a bit more softly spoken, like, but it's still getting the point across. It's still forcing that that assertion in what you're trying to say, but not in an aggressive manner. So the 17th of March, Mercury is conjunct the North Node as well. So this is really, once again, important. It's to do with, like future goals, planning, ideas coming up on that day. Do pay attention. 18th of March, Venus is square Jupiter and the Sun is sextile Uranus. So this brings... with Venus and a square to Jupiter, it can sometimes be things like the price of living goes up, can be things like inflation, it can be about banking and interest rates sometimes going up, and just the overall costs of things. With the Sun sextile Uranus, this brings a shock. This can be, once again, it's an opportunity, so it shakes something up in a way that brings about an opportunity. It could bring storms and stormy weather particularly. Okay, so the 19th of March, we get to the new moon in Pisces at 28 degrees. And this is the first new moon since the last eclipse. So this begins to lighten that eclipse season. We start to move away from the crazy making and the massive change and the massive upheavals and endings that eclipse seasons bring, and this really moves us forward into the next phase, with it being right at this late degree of Pisces. This is like ready to dissolve what has been, ready to start new and afresh in the next sign. The Sun enters Aries on the 20th of March, and so this is the equinox, a star for pagans. This really starts the astrological new year, and so this is really significant. Mercury goes direct also on this day, so this brings about like the communications we've been waiting for, things that have been held up, things that have been backwards and forwards and not really getting the momentum behind them that they need in terms of plans and stuff like that, finally begins to come forward. This really brings about a new year energy. So this is stepping into the astrological new year. Mars is trine to Jupiter, and that is just like really busy making. That is like, we are taking action, we're going to do this. It's positive forward motion. And the Sun conjuncts Neptune, which once again is kind of like some sort of confusion around a leader, some sort of confusion, or some sort of like, and it's like a spiritual ending. So it could even be like a funeral of somebody who was like in a power position. It doesn't have to be like a world leader as such, but it could be like a corporate leader, somebody that was who was well known globally. So yeah, and there's a Mercury conjunct the North Node. That is, once again, we have this whole like just as something forward planning, this North Node, like what it is that we need to do, how we need to move forward, the fated, destined soul purpose moving forward, what needs to be said and done and planned and forward motion. The Sun conjunct Saturn on the 25th, and that is a little restrictive. It kind of restricts, it can be a world leader or a leader of some sort, like a boss at work, even on a personal level, laying down some rules, and creating some restrictions. However, this can be also about some restrictions around a world leader or person in a position of power. This is really great energy. Saturn, as much as it's a malefic planet and it can cause so much difficulty when you have like a really difficult aspect in your natal chart with Saturn. However, it's a really great energy for learning something new, something that's like really interesting you, or like something you've always wanted to learn, or really shining in your studies and that kind of thing. The Sun sextiles Pluto, Saturn sextiles Pluto as we move into the end of the month of March. So it's bringing about this transformation. And then Venus finally moves into Taurus on the 30th of March, which is great because that's where Venus loves to be. It's like right back at home. And so that gives us, going forward into April, it looks more positive, definitely. It gives us that sort of relief with Venus in Taurus. There's more luxury. I think February and March possibly have been quite difficult months. Financially, there looks to have been struggles. And so with that Venus moving back into Taurus on the 30th of March, ready for the month ahead, and also moving out of the eclipse season, coming to the end of the Mercury retrograde, it just poses that whatever struggles we've had through February and March now come to an ending, ready for the next month of April. So as we get to April, what we have to realise that April, Aries season, we're now into Aries. We've got the Sun in Aries. We've got a lot of planets have moved through to Aries. There's like Mars, Mercury, I think, Saturn, Neptune, Chiron's still there. There's a lot going on in Aries. And Aries is a sign that is about self-reliance, independence. It can be considered a sign that's about war, aggression, assertiveness. But I definitely think there is a lot of power that we're going to need to storm through the rest of the year from this point. I think it's going to be incredibly fast-paced and forward motion. I think that this is really a pivotal moment in the year where we really get going. Yeah, overcoming the struggles of February and March and moving into April. I really believe that this is the point of 2026 where we really get this forward momentum. We're starting to really step up, take care of our needs, what we need, not waiting for other people to sort of step in or help us. And it's this very independent, self-reliant phase. How that will look is going to be interesting, because does it mean that the things we've relied on up until now, whether it be power companies, energy companies, whether it be the connections on internet and stuff like that, whether it be like the large corporations and the food shops, and whether it be the water boards and stuff like that. Now, are we going to have to get to a point where we are generating our own power, where we are finding our own water, creating our own sustainable living? I don't know, maybe that's a little bit extreme, but yeah, there's definitely this sense of independence around April, and as we move through April. So we start April with the 2nd of April, there is a full moon, 12 degrees of Libra. A Libra full moon can be bringing it together, like it's about Libra being about relationships and connections and working together, and with this full moon bringing the completion around a partnership, whether that be like a corporate partnership, whether that be a political partnership, countries that work together and allies, whether that's going to bring things up with those issues where there's a disagreement or anything like that, people just going separate ways, people just being more independent. There just seems to be this sense of importance around self-reliance and independence for April, as I say. Okay, so Mercury is trine Jupiter on the, I think also the 2nd of April. That's just like so much communication, so much, it's like media hype sometimes. A lot of information, a lot of communications and connections and things going on. And Venus squares Pluto on the 3rd. So as we move through April, we have this square to Pluto. So what happened at the start of the year in January, where the personal planets and the Sun met with Pluto, this is now moving to a much more challenging part of this cycle. So this can be around finances, this can be around connections, because as I say, we've had this Libra full moon. I mean, a lot of this year, I don't want to say the name, but obviously there's been quite a large sex scandal through 2025 with information being drip fed, the Epstein files. So this could bring out some sort of information regarding that, which is very difficult for people to deal with. I mean, the full moon in Libra can be about justice, and this would definitely suggest possibly something is going to come to court. Some sense of justice is brought about. So the Sun squares Jupiter also, and it just seems to bring a lot of hassle or a lot of trouble for potentially a leader. This can be very much a very active time in terms of, our creativity, our vitality. The Sun can be about, our soul essence and who we are and what we're doing. And this brings about a lot. So we've got so much on we might feel a bit overwhelmed, like there's a lot on our plate. Whatever's gone on through March and February now needs rectifying, everything needs being put right. And there's just this sense of there's a lot to get on with. Mars is then sextile to Uranus on the 8th of April, potentially more Uranus issues there. And Mars moves into Aries on the 9th of April, which is also the day where the Mercury post retrograde shadow ends. So this really does move that energy forward. Then we're into new territory in terms of like Mercury's like movements through the zodiac signs, and so it brings clean energy around communication and planning and just moving things forward generally, and connections with others and all that sort of thing. Mars is conjunct Neptune on the 13th, so very confusing actions, men acting weirdly sometimes. There can be some sort of illusion around fighting, why people are fighting, what began a war, who began a war, what it's all about. This could reveal something like that, but this definitely could suggest some sort of it can also be a bit of a storm, couldn't it? Because with Neptune at seas, a lot of rain, actions around rain and seas. Mercury and Uranus is around at that same time, so there's potential for a bit of a storm or something to rage at that time. On the 15th, Mercury moves into Aries as well. And then on the 17th, there's this new moon in Aries at 27 degrees, so it's right towards the end of the sign of Aries. It's conjunct to Chiron, so this is really going to highlight injuries, wounds, problems that people are facing in war zones particularly. This could suggest there's some sort of attack somewhere in the world, and there's injuries caused by that. It does suggest also with Mercury conjunct Neptune that there's some sort of confusion, and that can also be flooding as well, because with Neptune involved and Mercury, so there could be issues around travel, flooding, This could bring some casualties about around this new moon. This can be about healing and understanding our personal wounds better and what we need to heal. So it brings a new start as well. Mars is conjunct Saturn on the 19th, which I just think is quite a military-like energy. So this would suggest some sort of war, some sort of fighting, some sort of attack. Mercury is also conjunct Saturn, and then Mercury and Mars come together as well. On the 20th of April, the Sun moves into Taurus. So that really changes the energy a bit. There's a sense of the Sun in Taurus can be quite bull-like, because it is the bull. It's very bullish. It's going to push forward and meet its own needs, because it's a Venus-ruled sign. It's earthy. It's about real life, resources, possessions, money. When the Sun in Taurus, this is very, although obviously the Sun in Aries would be considered possibly selfish, this ends up being more about connections, but in order to making connections which are specifically to meet needs, to get something from the other person in some sense. Venus is conjunct Uranus on the 24th of April, which in itself, that really does shake up the financial markets. It really does also suggest some sort of maybe earthquake activity and something earthy based, because obviously this is in Taurus as well, and Venus is in Taurus. It's very strong. Uranus is going to shake up those values, really, those financial values, or the values people have around who they are, what they own, what's important to them in terms of materialism. So there's a shake-up there. Venus then moves into the sign of Gemini, bringing a sense of partnership and connection. This can be quite a light, flirtatious energy as well, so it's quite fun. But on the 25th, the Sun squares Pluto. Once again, this is going to bring up something quite shocking, dark, shadowy, from the underworld. What has a leader particularly been doing? Are they going to be found to be having done something which was underhand, very manipulative, not the best thing they should have been doing? So yeah, that's that one. And then we move forward on the 26th. Okay, so Venus on the 24th has moved into Gemini. On the 26th, Uranus moves into the sign of Gemini. Now, this is very interesting because around about the same time last year, Venus and Uranus met at the late degrees of Taurus, and then both moved within a few days of each other into the sign of Gemini. Uranus usually moves sign probably around about every 8 years, 7-8 years, that sort of thing. Uranus has then retrograded back into the last few degrees of Taurus through the winter, and then is once again moving forward with Venus at this stage back into Gemini, where it will then remain in Gemini. It won't come back into Taurus again. So this is really, really going to bring about issues around finances. That we have to understand that when Uranus was in Gemini, there was a lot of cyber attacks, financial scams online, people using AI to clone websites of companies and things, and then conning people with products that which they didn't have, this, that and t'other. So there's been an awful lot of that go on. Also, there was a lot of things regarding just so much seismic activity. There was the whole things with the comets. They were discovered last July, so when Uranus was already in Gemini. There was like the discovery of 3i Atlas, which is now already like on its way out of the solar system. It's past Jupiter and it's on its way out. But this could suggest once again this sort of like comets, that sort of thing. But there's definitely a sense of financial issues, money, online banking, power outages, all sorts of stuff like that going on. Right then, so Mercury on the 26th, as Uranus moves into the sign of Gemini, the ruler of Gemini, which is Mercury, is square to Jupiter. This brings problems because square can be quite combative, it can be quite difficult energy. Jupiter is kind of exacerbating that. It's making it more of a problem, it's making it bigger. I mean, yes, it does sort of give some blessings to it as well, but it's a big problem. Venus then trines Pluto this time, so whatever's gone on previously where Venus was square to Pluto at the start of the month is now beginning to take action, fix the whatever, if there was financial difficulties or if this was about legal things and legal matters towards like sex exploitation. This is now being put right. Things are being put in place to prevent that from happening again. And then Venus is square to the North Node, so it's not exactly whatever measures are being put in place to prevent preventative measures for exploitation or issues with money and manipulation as well. It's not exactly going to work in future. There's still going to be challenges and issues around this. It's not exactly the best fix, for example. So that is very much the month of April. It is very fresh, new, fiery energy. It starts the whole zodiac new year and stuff like that, like the zodiac signs moving through the Aries and Taurus. It's the recovery after the eclipse season, which I believe will have been quite difficult through February and March. Okay, so May is a month where we have 2 full moons in the same calendar month. So it's going to have double the sort of tension and drama that comes about at the full moon. It's going to have double the amount of sort of completion and ending energy, things coming to an end. So yeah, it's a big one. Also with the full moon, the first full moon in the month, right on the 1st of May, in Scorpio. So Scorpio, once again, it has that sort of sense of the underworld, the things that have been exploited or manipulated, things that shouldn't have been done in a particular way, that have been hidden, kept secret. This sort of brings it out, brings it into the revelation as the sun and the moon sort of stand in opposition, but the moon sort of shines on it. So this is going to be an interesting start to the month of May for definite. We also have Venus sextile Saturn at that point. So this puts Venus into a situation of power, and Saturn kind of controlling something. This can be about politics, definitely with Saturn there. And Gemini, this can be about people. Venus in Gemini can be about people taking an opportunity to say what they need to say or do what they need to say. Okay, so on the 3rd of May, Mercury moves into Taurus. When Mercury is in Taurus, people tend to speak in a more arty May, so it's like poetic. It can be quite considered. People slow down their speech and their thoughts somewhat, so it can be quite a relaxing month, a relaxing time. Whereas Mercury is in Taurus, instead of like your thoughts and your plans like going 100 miles an hour, this kind of puts it into a nice earthy, grounded pace of life. It slows down those thoughts, so you get better sleep usually. So it's quite luxurious in that sense. Mars squares Jupiter, Mercury squares Pluto, both on the same day, the 5th of May. So it's a lot of action and aggression. Mercury square Pluto, what's being said, what's being seen isn't exactly how things are. There's some sort of hidden agenda, I would say, with this. Plan isn't exactly what people think it is. But it definitely feels quite angry, quite warlike on that 5th of May. Something's happening. We have got on the 6th, Pluto goes retrograde on the 6th of May. So this Pluto energy the day before with the square to Mercury is kind of amplified. Mercury can be about communications, and with Pluto going retrograde and also squaring Mercury, this is a sense of losing connection, ending or transformation around how we communicate or connect with each other. Also with that full moon just a few days previous, the Scorpio ruled by Pluto, there's this sense of a loss of connection, a loss of relationships, connections, that kind of thing. It's interesting. Okay, so if we skip forward a little bit, the 14th of May, Mercury conjunct the Sun. This is going to suggest a very important communication, connection, a plan come into mind, ideas. This is definitely very much an ideas kind of energy. It happens at 23 degrees of Taurus, so if you have anything in your natal chart around that point, it's going to implicate that. And then on the 16th, we have the new moon in Taurus at 25 degrees, and it's conjunct Mercury. This really does suggest a new communication system, a new connection, a new way of relating to each other, new value system maybe even as well. With the new moon, it starts a new cycle. Taurus, this can be about finances. Definitely it can be about connections, relationships, how we relate to each other. Mercury is about communication also. On the 17th of following day, Mercury moves into the sign of Gemini, which is its home sign. So Mercury then is in a better condition. Obviously then that means that we're going to be thinking a lot, planning a lot, talking a lot. It's very surface level, the types of conversations people have under a Mercury in Gemini sign. So yeah, this is it's an interesting part of the month. It seems our brains are going to get a lot busier. Mercury is conjunct Uranus at that stage when it moves into Gemini, with Uranus having just moved into Gemini as well. So this Mercury conjunct Uranus definitely suggests big storms because of the two gods of the air and the winds and its flights, its travel, transport, delivery systems. It's going to relate to, but it's high winds and it can be big storms. It can also suggest other things from out in space, the comets, aviation and all those kinds of things, space travel, etc. Mars moves into the sign of Taurus, which is not a good space for Mars to be. It doesn't like being in Taurus. It's too slow. It holds it back, slows it down. It doesn't really get the whole need for luxury because it's impractical. So yeah, it kind of is a bit. Mars in this position feels a bit self-centered sometimes, and so it's not the best position. Mercury is square to the north nodes, so whatever's happening is posing a bit of an issue to future development moving forward. On the 21st of May, the Sun moves into the sign of Gemini. The Sun moves into the sign of Gemini, and so this is a much more friendly time of the year. It's a time where we're more likely to go out and be more sociable, meeting new people, creating more connections, a lot more communication. But it's a very, as we're moving towards the summer, getting out and about and going places and meeting people is really highlighted. Venus is square to Neptune, so somebody might not be exactly what they say they are in terms of if you're planning to meet someone or date somebody. There's a slight confusion, illusion. There is a sense that how you thought somebody was or what they would be like, they are not exactly who they said they were. The Sun is conjunct Uranus on the 22nd as well, so this is very shocking, and this can be about once again, like I say, the world leader, but with the Sun conjunct Uranus, this can be volcanic, fiery wildfires. It can pose issues in terms of heat wave. Maybe we'll get a bit of a heat wave around about late the 22nd of May. We might get a nice little warm spell. It can be quite stormy. It can bring shocks around a world leader also. On the 23rd of May, Venus is trine the North Node, so this needs some action, towards money, finances, connections, relationships. And then on the 25th, the Sun, well, it might also be the 23rd, the Sun is square the North Node, so there's a sense of creativity and leadership is potentially posing a little bit of a problem to the sort of destiny in the future, this sort of thing. Okay, so the 26th, I'm just going to skip forward a little bit. Mars is going to be square to Pluto, and that is pretty destructive, a bit of an aggressive, manipulative, dominating energy. It's very fiery, angry, warlike. It's quite concerning, definitely, on the 26th of May. The Sun is also going to be trine to Pluto at the same time as Mars being square. So that suggests then an angry leader is doing something which is just basically causing death. It could bring up trials about people who have already taken these actions, which have been, they've then tried to say it was intelligence that said to do this and that and to the other, and they had reasons for doing it, but really there was no reason. So it could highlight something that's already happened in the past. However, this is likely to be a bit of a difficult day, bit of a difficult time around that sort of thing. There's something definitely a little manipulative going on with a world leader at that point. On the 29th of May, so we're coming towards the end of the month, Venus is square to Saturn. This would suggest that something has been particularly if we're thinking that this could be related to the Epstein trials or something like that. This is sort of restricting the women from being honest. There could be a sense of there's fear that they were not able to give their statements truthfully or appear in court, or some sort of restriction, something holding some, like, the feminine back. This can be restrictions and taxations, tariffs and stuff like that as well, financially. Fines and all those sorts of issues. Okay, so we get to the final day of May and the second full moon, in this time in Sagittarius, on the 31st of May, and it's at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. So this is then going to bring about a completion around world travel. There's something that's possibly going to hold people back when it comes to travelling. Shared information, knowledge. There is a chance that this is going to bring a completion around learning, education, because obviously at that point we're starting to move towards the end of the school year, particularly in some countries. I know they break up around about June time, end of May. Not here in the UK, but in terms of exams and things, like those who are sitting exams this year, it's coming to the end of their education period of time. Also, by the time we get to this phase, there's a sense of like spirituality, wisdom, religion coming into play here. So if any of this information, this has been about wars and killing and stuff, and then there's a sense of it being sort of portrayed as their religious right to, or they were doing right by what they believed their God wanted, sort of coming into question, definitely. It's very intense, very powerful month. There's a lot of information coming through, because as we move through April, May, and getting into that Gemini season, the Cancer season, the sun's moving around, the earth is moving around to the other side of where Three-Eye Atlas passed, because it was always the opposite side of the sun to us when it was passing through the solar system. So now we're moving to that other part of the year, we're moving around the other side. We're going to start moving into the kind of the trails, if you like, of the Three-Eye Atlas, and whatever information was left behind, whatever was seeded at that point. And this is quite significant as we move through this Sagittarius full moon, and then through the next like new moons, particularly as we get towards like the Cancer new moon next month and stuff like that. This begins to really start to sow those seeds of whatever was left in the atmosphere by Three-Eye Atlas. So starting June, we have the same Mercury square Neptune that we had right at the very start of January. It was a bit sort of crazy those first days of January, with sort of confusion about like leaders and fighting and different things in different countries, and lots of crazy. So it's going to be an interesting and very start of June. And we also have Mercury then square to Saturn, so there's this whole sort of the people versus those in power. So it can be again anti-government sort of protests type things. It can be just issues, bearing in mind that both Saturn and Neptune at this point will be into Aries, whereas in January they were in Pisces, so it's a different energy. This one's more, I guess, more warlike, more active, more fiery. So that brings a few problems right at the very start of June. However, there is this really, really, really good aspect right at the start of June also, where Venus comes conjunct to Jupiter at 25 degrees of Cancer on the 10th of June. this is incredibly positive because Jupiter, as we know, is like exalted in that sign, and Venus is also pretty, like wow aspected in Cancer. It's good energy for it. So, this is a really sort of very loving, very protective energy, very nurturing, with it being in Cancer as well. It could be quite emotional, very emotional with it being in a water sign. And then later on the 14th of June, Venus moves into Leo. And then there is the new moon in Gemini on the 15th. So this would suggest, like new connections, new relationships forming, and or like sort of friendships, meeting people, communications, all sorts of things coming through at that point. Around this time, the Mercury shadow period begins in Cancer, because for the next Mercury retrograde, which won't be until the end of June, but the shadow period begins obviously sooner than that. So around about the time of the new moon. Okay, so then if we move forward a little bit, we have like a Venus trine on the 17th to Neptune. So that's quite dreamy as well. And with it being in Aries, it gives it a little bit of a creative spark, a bit of passion. But it's quite like a daydreamy energy, this fire trine though. So it's very passionate. And then on the 18th, Venus opposes Pluto. So there's something that comes up. There's something about that's been hidden, a secret, a love affair, something comes out. Also on the 19th of June, Chiron moves into Taurus. So, I mean, it's been a long time that it's been in Aries. So that is really going to change the dynamic from being about personal wounds and stuff like that to being about sort of relationships and values. Okay, so then on the 22nd of June, the Sun moves into Cancer. And so this really starts the whole, like, the summer solstice and the Northern Hemisphere, obviously. And then, like, it's like, it just really brings a nice energy, usually, a really happy vitality, like that sort of, just like the sun, empowering the sun. We have, like, the most sun on that day. The Sun squares Neptune on the 25th. So that could bring some sort of confusion around a leader. It could be also about just confusion about travel and, like overseas. There could be something that is brought up with it being in water signs. Could be like fighting and stuff as well, a bit warlike. Venus is trying to Saturn on the 25th also. So, I mean, to me, that gives it a sort of sense of money, value, worth, some sort of currency situation, possibly. Some sort of, trying to get organised, accountability and that kind of thing. And then finally on the 29th of June, we have the full moon in Capricorn. And so this is going to bring a completion to sort of like what began in January. And also as June began with that same aspect between Mercury and Neptune that began in January, it's almost like there's something that started in January that's coming to a completion here, as we were in like Capricorn season then, and it's now the full moon in Capricorn. This also kind of begins, in some ways, the eclipse season sort of begins here. So we start to build up once again that kind of eclipse energy, because the next, in the following months, there's another eclipse season coming. And also in January, there was that build up, like late January, it was building towards the eclipse season that began like February, March time. So yeah, and then Mars moves into Gemini on the 30th and Mercury goes retrograde. So that's going to obviously pose then a few problems. Any communications you were hoping to sort out, or connections, things like that, like anything that needed to be sorted out is going to probably take a little bit longer. July the 1st, Jupiter makes its move into the sign of Leo. Now, Jupiter only changes sign once a year, so this is the big change for Jupiter. It's been in Cancer since June last year, and now it moves into Leo, which is going to bring about a different energy. Obviously, Jupiter in Cancer was exalted, and then Jupiter in Leo, well, it can kind of, in the worst case scenario, like inflate the ego a little bit. However, it can be like super creative and really take the leadership really well. It can be somebody who's just like super like positive all the time, you know, like full of like sunshine, that kind of thing. So that's a really good thing. It could obviously suggest, with Jupiter being in a fire sign, that it's going to be like a really hot summer. So then we have Mars and Uranus conjunction on the 4th of July, which it's going to be incredibly fiery, sudden shocks. This is a conjunction which took place when there was an assassination attempt on Trump previously. It was also something that took place when there was like FBI case issues and court things against Trump. I don't really follow American politics, but obviously it's something that has had implications with Donald Trump in the past. However, it was when it was in a different sign. Uranus now moved through to Gemini, and Mars in Gemini as well. I do believe that Donald Trump is possibly a Gemini, so it probably will have quite a significant effect on him. With it being a Mars-Uranus conjunction, also this could be about travel, because it's in like an air sign. Uranus can be about airports, flights, stuff like that. Mars can be about movement, action, going places. So there could be issues around airports and stuff like that. However, it could also be quite fiery with it being Mars, or it could be quite stormy with it being in air sign Gemini. This could suggest cyber attacks also. We also have then on the 7th of July, the Sun is square to Saturn. This can really impose some sort of restrictions and some sort of challenges, rules, regulations. This can be about an authority against a leader, because the Sun, it could be a leader trying to impose authority upon people, so it's causing a bit of an issue there. On the 10th of July, we have Venus moving into Virgo. Now, this is where Venus is involved. She's not very strong there. It's usually about giving too much to other people, you know, like being of service and helping and nurturing and taking care of other people over yourself. It's also can be quite a frugal Venus when she likes like luxury and spending lots of money and stuff like that, but Virgo can be quite frugal in that respect. Okay, so then on the 12th of July, the Sun is conjunct to Mercury again. Mercury, however, is in retrograde, so that's going to go back over something that's already happened and possibly bring up the problem in that matter. The new moon on the 14th will be in the sign of Cancer, and so this is also sort of going to be an interesting time with the new moon. I'll talk about that nearer the time in another video. So then by the 16th, 17th, 18th of July, around those times, Uranus starts playing its part with a sextile to Neptune, a trine to Pluto. This is that little tiny sort of minor triangle that was playing out through last year, but this is when it starts to sort of come to exact degrees and angles and stuff. So this is like sudden change, transformation, just confusion, dreaminess, all the sort of dissolving of like power and structures and all sorts of things going on with this. Mars is sextile to Saturn around about the 19th, 20th. On the 20th of July, we have Jupiter opposing Pluto. Now, this is going to be quite a big situation. It will probably be in play throughout the most of July, possibly longer, because Jupiter moves quite slowly, but Pluto moves in even more slowly. Jupiter is sextile to Uranus as well. So this time around about this 20th of July, 18th, 19th, 20th, etc., is going to bring up some real fiery energy, some big changes, some shocks, possibly some disasters. Hopefully not, but I mean, it really could bring up some disasters around that time. So on the 24th of July, Mercury goes direct, which obviously will then start to bring things forward again, but then there's going to be the whole Mercury conjunctions again that have already played out and going back over them. So it brings up its problems, it brings up the solutions later. It takes longer for the situation to be worked through. On the 27th of July, the Sun opposes Pluto exactly. This is really likely to bring out some significant secrets or something significant about a world leader. It could see a really big change for a world leader, some shocks, because I think the Sun also is sextile to Uranus at that time. So this is like potentially quite a sudden, shocking, changeable, significant day. And it's right building into the full moon energy as well, with the full moon exact on the 29th of July in Aquarius. So yeah, this is like very significant. You know, full moons always bring high tension, stuff like that. With it being Aquarius, it's ruled by Uranus, so it's shocks, it's progression, so it can bring something quite futuristic. It could be about cyber attacks and issues with things like that. Obviously, we had quite a lot of cyber attacks with like big companies and different things happening last year, and that seems to be like potential around this time. The Sun and Jupiter come together, and the Moon and Pluto are on the opposite side. So at this full moon, there's the Sun and Jupiter one side and the Moon and Pluto on the opposite. And so it's going to be very significant with Jupiter opposing Pluto, the Sun, and all. Yeah, it's going to bring big change. And it's the sort of thing where you're not really going to go back from it afterwards. It's going to, it seems a little bit final. And then we have the Venus and Mars square on the 30th of July. Now, when you consider that there was like the Venus and Mars conjunction on the 8th of January, a time when they came together and the Sun was conjunct with them, there was lots and lots of sort of like power to manifest something better around that time. This is really significant. Okay, so apologies for the barking, and also something else I forgot to include in the July was the change of the nodes. So the North and the South lunar nodes change every 18 months, and they are points which define where the eclipse seasons will occur. So in July, they move from the Pisces and Virgo axis into the Leo Aquarius axis, which will change the collective point of destiny, what we're working towards. With it being in Pisces previously, this was about spiritual and development, emotional development for some people as well, healing. It was very much a healing, mystical type axis. It was also about a change from what we perceive to be the reality and what is the real reality point. As we now move into the axis of Leo and Aquarius, with the North Node in Aquarius, the South Node in Leo, this can be a bit more about creativity and leadership from the old, moving into more of a fairer, almost like a utopian type community based decision making, rather than dictatorial. It like changes the dynamic of governing structures sometimes, but it can also be about creativity and things like that, and actually then coming more into a community to express ourselves and be more together and oneness. So I get a sense with this year that by sort of like April, May, June, we're going along nicely. The world's sort of getting a bit better. It feels more safer. Things are calming down from the previous eclipse season. And then when in like sort of June, July, we get into that Mercury retrograde. Things start to go a little bit backwards, but still everything's all right. And then we get to this point in July, at the end of July, moving into this eclipse season. And this eclipse season is going to be quite a big changer. It's going to be quite probably messy for some countries particularly. So as we start August, we have Venus move into Libra, which is really positive for Venus. It's a place where she's at home. She's like exalted there. It's perfect, like about relationships. Everything's going smoothly. It's a really good state for Venus to be in. So there seems to be some sort of balancing out financially, possibly in the world as well. If there's been financial issues with certain things happening in the previous eclipse, which I imagine there had been, this will sort of bring some balance. Mars then moves forward into Cancer. The Mercury shadow period ends, and Mercury moves forward into Leo also. Sometimes Mercury in Leo can seem a little bit bossy. It can be very sort of focused, direct communication. It can be quite controlling, dominant, a bit loud, assertive. You know, when there's somebody who's always talking louder than everyone else in the room. It can be, that sort of thing. With Mars moving into Cancer, there's a sense of emotional action, like feeling like emotionally driven. So not necessarily doing things that need to be doing, but feeling like emotionally charged to then have to take action. It can be about protection around the home, and that can be like your home country as well. So it can be quite patriotic in that sense. Okay, so then we move forward to, there's a Venus trine to Pluto, a Venus trine to Uranus, and so this creates this like grand air trine, because by this point Uranus will be in Gemini, and Venus will be moving into Libra, and Pluto will still be in Aquarius. So then there's this air, grand air trine. So with air, this is lots of ideas, lots of communication, lots of plans, thoughts, just loads and loads and loads of, like, it's quite fast action, and things are it's like progressive as well. It's like a progressive thinking. It could be quite shocking, quite sudden with it being Uranus. This is like, it can be like to do with AI. It can be to do with like cyber attacks and scammers and money and finances, and something's happening now to sort of counteract that. Maybe there are ideas coming through, or this is working so fast that it's happening quicker than people can control in some ways, but there's a lot of action needing to be taken, and this is really fast-paced action, and lots of thought has to go into it, lots of just ideas and stuff. It's like very progression is being forced forward here. Okay, so then Venus also opposes Neptune. This is all around sort of 10th, 11th, 12th sort of time, in maybe 9th to the 12th of August. So Venus opposing Neptune, it kind of is dissolving relationships in a little bit. There's some sort of like dreaminess. Something's not as it seems. It's a little bit deluded in terms of like what it believes it's worth, and its finances and stuff like that is kind of off the mark a little bit there. And then we get to the 12th, and this new moon in Leo at 20 degrees of Leo will be a total solar eclipse. Now, this is going to be very significant, as it's the first in the whole 18-month cycle of the Leo Aquarius eclipses for the one in Leo. We've already had an Aquarius one at the start of the year, but well, earlier in the year, but this one's the first one in Leo. Leo is about leadership, and eclipses are known to either bring down leaders or it's the rise and fall of leaders. It can really cause problems where they are thrown out of power. They are, removed from power, or they can even possibly lose their lives and all the rest of it. So this is going to be quite significant. Being a Leo eclipse, this could see an end in so many different ways, but an end to many people who are in positions of power. So that will bring change in itself. There is a few things happening from the 16th, 17th, 19th, and then this starts to build into the next eclipse later in the month. So there is there's a Mars-Neptune square and a Mercury and trine Saturn. So Mercury trine Saturn is trying to set up some sort of rules or regulations around something. And that could see a leader. It could see a leader being taking action to try and control something, or some rules or authority being taken against a leader. This Mars square Neptune, it's kind of stormy. It's a little warlike. It's a little bit problematic. There is definitely going to be some confusion and problems around that time. There is then the opposition, so around about the 22nd-ish, we get to the Venus opposition with Saturn. It could be the 21st, 22nd-ish, sorry. So Venus opposing Saturn, there's some sort of financial restriction. So whatever's being put into place to try and bring some sort of balance is, it still needs sort of working out. And because we're going to go through this whole Venus retrograde moving into next month particularly, and then forward through October and November, this seems to me that something is beginning to sort of jar there. Although we're not quite at that point into the Venus retrograde pre-shadow, because that's a few weeks later, but with Venus now being in the sign of Libra, because the Venus retrograde is going to move back from Scorpio back into Libra, so we're kind of within the signs of where the Venus retrograde is going to be. So this to me suggests that round about that point in August, round about 21st, 22nd, maybe something's happening financially or with law, justice, relationships. There's something where there's starting to be a bit of a sticking point, a restriction, a limitation, something's not going quite to plan. Venus doesn't really like to be restricted because it's quite overindulgent in that sense. So then on round about the 24th of August, the sun moves into the sign of Virgo. So we've moved away now from the Leo season, we're into Virgo. This now brings a need to bring some clarity. There needs to be some, accountability, some working things out, some organisation, some just a better understanding and sensible action being taken at this point, because Leo season, it's usually the summer, everyone's a bit, off on their holays and having a great time and doing what they love and having the best life. But when you then move the sun back into Virgo, it's time to, go back to school, really. It's time to pick up the books and really knuckle down a little bit and take action and think clearly. On the 25th, just after that, Mercury is conjunct the South Node, opposes the North Node. So this Mercury with the nodes is going to be there's something also got to be thought about. There's something coming up. There's something planning. Mercury then also moves into Virgo. which is a good space for Mercury to be. It is one of the places where Mercury rules. So this really gives Mercury some power to be like in clarity of thinking. It does it in a way which is both fair to self and to others, because Virgo can be a sign which can relate to servitude and helping others and fair, like all that sort of thing, being quite fair. So that's a good place for it to be. So we've now really got Venus in a good place, Mercury in a good place, Mars not so much, but things are sort of coming together still. And then we get to a Mercury square on the 26th, and suddenly we're into the next eclipse as well on the 28th. So this Mercury square, this could be to do with, Virgo, it can be to do with sometimes the medical profession, or people who work within offices, people who work within caring professions. There could be a bit of a shock there. There is also a sense that this could be to do with airports and to do with travel. There could be serious issues around travel in that late part of August. I mean, we have a August bank holiday here in the UK, and there's usually some sort of travel chaos around that time. So it could relate to some sort of travel chaos. Mercury Uranus could bring up storms and weather problems, and obviously there's been a lot of seismic activity. However, I do feel that will settle down a little bit once Uranus has moved a little bit more through Gemini, and sort of the solar maximum sort of dies down a little bit too. So I don't know, there's a chance for some particular severe weather issues or some travel issues and that kind of thing. Communications issues as well, possibly, so like a communication system going down, whether that be problems with connection, internet, phones, power, that kind of thing. Okay, so on the 28th of August we get to the full moon, and it's a partial lunar eclipse, and this is the Pisces and the Sun Pisces full moon. This really is going to bring a big completion for something, because this Pisces, Virgo Pisces eclipse seasons really began around about late September, I think it was, in 2024. And then it has really run since then, but this will be literally the final of that Virgo Pisces axis, with the nodes already now moved into Leo and Aquarius. So this eclipse, and also with it being a full moon, so that ending a cycle, it's completions, it's bringing about a lot of drama, because full moons obviously bring a lot of drama as well. There's going to probably be, with Pisces, it can be quite confusing, it can be quite misguided and illusionary and that sort of thing. This can be about spirituality, so there could be something about beliefs and people's spirituality and religions being brought up. This could bring an end into a religious person, a religious leader, or religion in some way in itself. It could brings quite significant changes in that. This can also be about borders and controls and boundaries and that kind of thing, and it can really bring this sort of like end into something there. So it could bring like changes in borders and changes in the boundaries of countries, and which countries belong to which countries type thing. Okay, and then right at the very end of August we have got a trine between Jupiter and Saturn, and it is in the fire signs. And so this is going to bring out a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of controls. It's really increasing that. It's taking a lot of action towards that. And just as we get to this very end point of August, also we have this like building square between Mars and Saturn, which can usually be quite militant. It usually happens round about when there's issues with wars and stuff like that, in war zones. When there's like significant military action or an attack. So yeah, with this whole eclipse and right at the very end of August, there is potential for some real shake-ups and potentially issues. But yeah, then we move forward, don't we? So that's the month of August. So entering September, we straight away immediately start this Venus retrograde pre-shadow on the 1st of September. And this is going to be a really significant time all through September. And then it will retrograde through October. And then through even till sort of November and December, pretty much. We got this whole Venus retrograde playing out. Month starts with Mars square Saturn. This can possibly be a military attack, an upholding of the law in quite an active and defensive way. This can also be very assertive in war zones, something taking place there. Around about the 11th of September, Mercury moves into the sign of Libra, and also Venus moves into Scorpio. Well, Venus into Scorpio is not so good. It's actually in detriment in that position because it opposes Taurus. So Venus and Scorpio can be rather seductive. It can be manipulative. So it's seduction through manipulation and manipulation through seduction. There's a sense of exploitation of the feminine can sometimes happen in that respect. There is a sense of deception to get money, manipulation, as I said already. It's not a very good sign for Venus to be in. It's quite ruthless to some extent, but there's a sense of it can be obsessive, like a stalker, and all sorts of things can go on with this sort of Venus and Scorpio. So also on the 11th we have the new moon in Virgo. Now this is the first new moon since the eclipse season, so this starts to bring about some new, starts to release some of that eclipse energy. Up to this point we would have been still very much in that eclipse season energy. So this new moon in Virgo is going to bring about a sense of clarity and trying to clear up whatever mess has gone on during that time. Okay, so then Mercury activates this, like there was a minor trine that played out through most of 2025 and through 2026 where Pluto was trine to Uranus, and then there was sextiles between Neptune and Pluto and Uranus and stuff like that. So with Mercury, it's going to be in opposition to Neptune, it's going to be trine to Pluto, and it's going to be trine to Uranus. This is going to bring a sense of, so this is about ideas and communications and stuff like that. This is going to bring about as a new era because these are generational planets, so the outer planets, and so this activation that was taking place throughout 2025 and throughout this year was all about bringing this massive change. It's like a new era, breaking down the old era and starting something that is completely different, that's new. With Mercury activating these points, there's a sense of, well, with Pluto can bring about fears. So there's an action taken around releasing fears. It can be about trauma, something being revealed communication-wise. So obviously there's a lot of fears and things around AI, and with Pluto being in Aquarius, that seems to be the theme. Uranus at that point will be in Gemini, and so this is about the people freeing themselves from what has gone before, from regimes or whatever has been playing out. And so it's about a revolution, breaking free from that. And then with this Mercury opposing Neptune, there's just this sense of confusion, things dissolving, things not working out anymore, things need to change, that need to be changed. And there's this sudden feeling about it. You know, this can, with it being Uranus activated, with it being Pluto, with it being Neptune, this can be like an earth disaster, a natural disaster, those kinds of things. It could be something quite major happening. It could also be, you know, like nuclear. It could be a big problem. But there's a sense of positivity with it being, there's 2 trines. It's about taking action. And with the little minor triangle that's been playing out between the 3 planets, Pluto, Uranus and Neptune, there is opportunity. So it's not all doom and gloom, but at the time it can appear like everything's sort of like dissolving, breaking down, there's bad stuff happening, people are dying, this is a disaster. But it's the breakdown, it's the breaking eggs to make the omelette type thing of going forward. So then after that we get to the Venus square Pluto. And this is going to play out over the Venus retrograde. It will happen again in the next month, October, but then also again in December. So Venus square Pluto is going to bring up worries, fears. It can bring up things around the, you know, like sexual trauma and stuff with Venus being in Scorpio, but this can be financial. This can very much be about debt, serious debt problems and challenges around finances, very much so. So if there's been some sort of tech issues, glitches, communication issues, internet and stuff like that, this could suggest, you know, like it could affect like banking systems and currencies and stuff like that with this Venus square Pluto, and it is going to play out over the rest of the 2026 from this point going forward. Okay, so around about the 24th, we have the sun moving into Libra. And this is going to be around about the time of the equinox. So this is a very important time of balance. And Libra is a sign which is about justice. It's about harmony. It's about finding that balance. And then there is the full moon in Aries on the 26th. So the Aries full moon is usually about a completion around actions, completion around wars. It's trying to once again build those relationships and settle the disagreements and stuff like that. It can be interesting how that plays out, definitely. But it can be quite a feisty time where people are feeling quite tense, especially with it being a full moon. The full moon will be conjunct to Neptune, and so the moon and Neptune on one side, and then it's opposing the sun, and then there's like a sextile with Pluto and stuff like that. So yeah, there's time to manifest or to transform things around that time. If you're finding any of this content helpful, please feel free to like, subscribe and comment. So moving into October, we have quite a bit of challenging Mars energy. We have Mars square Mercury, but then Mars will also be opposing Pluto. Mercury in that square to Pluto, so it makes this quite transformative but very, very difficult T-square. This is going to bring up people's fears, phobias, all sorts of trauma-related things could come up. This can be around, it can be quite an angry, overly assertive, communicative style, with it being with like Mercury and Mars and that Pluto energy. So it's almost a sense of like, I want to say like counselling, you know, like when somebody's been through like a trauma and then they're like, it sort of comes out, it's revealed, it's like, yeah, it sort of comes out, and it's like this whole Mercury communication, Mars. This, of course, could suggest some sort of like, because Mars can be like quite a separating or cutting energy, and Pluto can sort of bring the ends of things sometimes. So this could be like communication that is cut off. So yeah, it'll be interesting, that very start of October. And then we move with that 4th of October is the Venus Venus goes retrograde, and that is going to bring, obviously we've already discussed that in the previous month, but this will go on till the 4th of October, and it starts at 8 degrees of Scorpio until the 26th of October when it moves back into Libra. Then the retrograde continues through Libra to the 15th of November and 22 degrees of Libra, where it goes then direct. However, the shadow period started from pretty much the 1st of September and carries on all the way through to the 17th of December, just to bring some clarity on that Venus retrograde dates. Once it moves through from into the Libra phase, it will be more about harmonising and rebalancing and trying to bring some justice to situations. However, while it's in Scorpio, it's pretty worrying, because it's obviously it's finances, it's about values, it's about debts particularly. It can definitely cause some problems there, and so with it also being in detriment in Scorpio, this generally brings out some worse traits of the Venus retrograde. Reevaluating relationships and how there's connection between like the feminine and the masculine, and particularly the use of sexual exploitation type thing. But it can also be very much about finances, and finances which are in quite dire order. Like it's not going well. It's pretty messed up. Debts and stuff like that. The other day, me and my son were looking back over Venus retrogrades where they've been in this sort of Scorpio or Scorpio Libra things, and they were asking me like what happened the last time it did this, and it was around about November 2010. I think there was a period of time where the Venus retrograde happened. There's been some since then, but I remember quite specifically a huge pile of debt came to me through a relationship that wasn't my debt, and it was something that had been very covered and deceitful, and it cost me massively. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, but it tends to bring up those kinds of where there's a relationship but someone hasn't been honest about their finances, and they've done something which then has left the other partner or the whole partnership and the joint finances in quite serious problems. Okay, so moving forward from that, Mercury meets with Venus on the 7th, around about 8 degrees of Scorpio, so it's right at the start of that point. We also have like the Sun opposes Saturn, so that's going to bring some rules, some restrictions, some highlighting some sort of structure, rules. Could be around restrictions around a leader particularly, or restrictions imposed by a leader. But yeah, so back to this Mercury conjunct Venus, there is a sense of these Mercury Venus, they can bring nice complementary conversations. They can bring meetings as well of people who could then in future possibly be a partner. There's a sense of, with it being in Scorpio, there's a sense of almost obsession though. It's like it's not necessarily so good. There could be talks about finances and finding some way of trying to fix them, but at the moment it's not a good situation. It's the start of the Venus retrograde, so there's some fixes to come. By the 10th, we've got the new moon in Libra. So obviously I'm not going to talk too much about the lunations because they will come probably in like separate videos, and there'll be loads of talk around the lunations. The new moon in Libra will try to rebalance relationships and connections to others and finances in some way. It starts a new cycle, however, with it happening at a point where Venus is in retrograde and not in a very good position. It's quite concerning that it could be a little bit of a turbulent cycle that begins from that new moon in Libra. There's a sense of justice needing to be brought forward, and it wouldn't surprise me if, like, I mean, this is just a guess and sort of a prediction ahead of time, if the actual Epstein, like some sort of trial, or it goes to court, or people are actually held to, like brought to justice around those matters, the people that were involved. It wouldn't surprise me if this new moon cycle in Libra brings some of that to, like to the courtrooms. So then there on the 11th, Venus is square to Mars. It's fixed signs. So fixed squares, also because we had that T-square right at the start, that was a fixed sign. So it brings fiction, it brings stubbornness, people who are just like relentlessly not willing to bend. And there's going to need to be some sort of flexibility by the end of this Venus retrograde, definitely. There is a sense of absolute stubbornness at the very start of October that is really going to be quite difficult. It's almost like, when somebody, you know a fact, but then someone absolutely denies it, and they just keep denying it and denying it and denying it, and it's like they need to like be truthful. They need to be flexible and actually tell the truth. Like, there's some sort of absolute relentless stubbornness at that start of October. Pluto goes direct on the 15th. There is a T-square that I've picked up here. So there's T-square between around about from the 11th all the way through like the 20th. So most of October it'll be playing out. There'll be this T-square between Mars in Leo, Venus will be in Scorpio, and Pluto in the early phases of Aquarius. So it's fixed T-square once again. And there's just this Mars-Venus, it feels like abuse, violence in relationships, friction, anger, a kind of breakdown of relationships with this Mars-Pluto. It's about separation, breaking up. I just think that if there are any relationships where it is just not going very well, I think this will be a breaking point for those types of relationships. I think in other ways this can bring, for those who are single, this could bring absolute determination, like when somebody is just obsessed with somebody and they're absolutely determined they're going, and it's almost like some sort of like secret or focused, like absolute focus and obsession upon somebody. This could obviously bring to court, once it moves in, like Venus moves into Libra particularly, this could obviously bring to court some sort of, like a celebrity who's had a stalker, and there could be a case where that's brought to court, and it becomes like it's in the media and the information's brought out about that. So around about the 24th of October, the sun moves into Scorpio, which surprisingly is slightly better placement for the sun. The sun does not like being in Libra. It's actually in fall in Libra. It's a difficult place for the sun to be, because instead of shining and doing what it wants and being creative and being about the self from its own soul, it's having to share the limelight, if you like. It's having to sort of play it down and compromise for a partner's needs as well. So with the sun moving into Scorpio, it probably will help a little bit, and it will meet with Venus in Scorpio once it moves through as well, quite quickly afterwards, around about the 24th as well. So the sun, we obviously had on the 6th of January, the sun's conjunction with Venus, pre-retrograde, and it's quite an important moment to illuminate what the heart truly desires, what you want, It's an important moment about what we value as beauty, and also how we are going to work towards our self-worth and everything like that. So it's an important aspect. It kind of starts a new cycle, this time with it being in the retrograde. It's starting to show where the cracks are, where it needs to be fixed in order for us to actually step forward towards what we were wanting in January. So this could be a period of time where we almost reevaluate those, anything we had at the start of the year in mind for this year, what we wanted to achieve, what we set our heart on doing. It might be a time to sort of reevaluate those, go back to those ideas, and work towards them, because it's almost as if something's not gone to plan. So Mercury goes retrograde also on the 25th of October. So then we would have both Venus and Mercury in the retrogrades. So yeah, this to me would suggest some sort of financial glitches are likely, cyber attacks on large companies and stuff like that, which can affect jobs and money and earnings, and just communications, connections. Venus and Mercury both are kind of like connections to others, like Mercury being about communication, but Venus being about relationships. So it's like how we connect to others very much be highlighted. We get to that full moon in Taurus. Like I say, I just think that there's certain energy in this October that would certainly bring any relationships that are struggling to a completion. And I would imagine by that full moon in Taurus, that could really be brought out and highlighted. There's a change in people's ideas of what we should, expect. It's almost like previously there were expectations around relationship, like we should be partnered up by a certain age. And I think this is kind of reconstructing those ideas around relationship, the needs around them and stuff like that. What people are willing to accept within relationships also. Okay, so then on the same day as this full moon in Taurus, Venus moves back into Libra, which is obviously going then, like I say, I think it will bring out court cases and legal matters around situations, where there's been stalkers, rapes, all the Epstein stuff could end up in court around that point if it hasn't already. There's certain things going on in the UK, particularly like around grooming and gangs and things towards women. I think women's rights will sort of, there could be some marches and stuff around those sorts of matters. And just the safety of women and the law around protecting women and children as well. And relationships as well. So whether they would end up being around that time, there are certain, laws passed where people should be able to get information on a potential partner. Women should be able to get information. I don't know if it's Clare's law or something. There's certain things, but whether something like that would be a new rule would be passed, so people could get any information if somebody is on a sex offenders list or anything like that before they enter a relationship with somebody. So we end the month once again with this Mercury square to Mars that happened right at the start of October. So October is bookended by this very direct, assertive, forceful speak, things being said. It can be quite anger making or angry, aggressive speaking. So it's a concerning month. I definitely think that the Venus retrograde isn't going to be pretty. It's something that I noticed since last year, and I was just like, I don't know. To me, it makes me concerned for the safety of women whether this is going to bring the justice that certain women have needed for a long time, and bring out the facts and the information that have been like pretty much hidden up till now. But and whether it's going to bring some justice, I don't know. But it's going to be potentially a little bit messy in the making. As we move into November, the Sun meets with Mercury, but then also Mars moves into its pre-retrograde shadow. So it's not actually the Mars retrograde at this point, but Mars has got to the point of 20 degrees Leo, which is the point which it will come back to towards the end of the retrograde, which it'll be in January 2027 or even further into 2027. However, so if we start around about the 4th of November, the Sun meets with Mercury. Mercury's already in retrograde, Venus is in retrograde, and then Mars is in its pre-retrograde shadow. So this is all three of the personal inner planets in the retrograde phase. So throughout most of 2026, there's a sense of yes, the world has had, on the larger scale, has had some craziness going on. But in terms of our personal lives and how it has affected us, it's been like our personal lives have been going okay. The world around us might be nuts, but we've been coping and going well, and we've been dreaming and manifesting, and everything's been going smoothly. It's been going forward. With a few glitches around the Mercury retrogrades, but generally speaking, things and eclipses as well. But generally speaking, things were moving along. At this point, October, November, December, that's going to stop being the case. And this is going to really start to, the things that are going on in the world around us are really going to start having an impact to our personal lives, bringing about change on a personal level, and sort of issues and just turmoil and struggle and the feeling of going backwards, taking that step backwards. So don't keep trying to push forward. That's the key to it. The key is to accept that, sometimes we have to go back over things. We have to just appreciate taking a bit of time out and taking a bit of a look, sort of a different perspective, to actually look and see, okay, we could change this, we could alter this, we can, reevaluate this. So there is a new moon in Scorpio on the 9th of November. That's going to be, I think that's going to bring up some stuff really about money, debts, finances. There is going to need to be possibly a new solution in terms of money. However, at this point, Venus will be in Libra. But I just think with the Venus retrograde having started in Scorpio, that's a sense of money there. But this can also be around the cost of medicines and, like pharmaceuticals, companies, that sort of thing. There could be things being brought up around maybe even lawsuits against them, things that have been done, things that are being revealed about medical companies or those sorts of things. So there's definitely a sense of revelation, revealing something. Can be about medicine. It could be people who work in like medicine, who work as at hospitals, doctors, carers, those sorts of things. This could obviously be about illnesses. So there could be sort of some sort of illness that's sweeping the people, knocking people off their feet a little bit, because with this whole retrograde of the inner planets, so it's obviously it could bring a sense of there's a flu or a virus or something that's going about that is making people having to sort of take a step back a little bit. I don't want to scare anyone too much there, but that's just a sense I get. So round about the 13th of November, Mercury goes direct, Venus goes direct. So that's a little bit of a relief. However, just as they go direct, they sort of drill down a little bit on those degrees. Mercury will be at 5 degrees of Scorpio, and Venus will be at 22 degrees of Libra. So it kind of puts a little highlight on those degrees or around that area in the chart. And at this point we can start to, the issues have all revealed, and then it's a case of beginning to start over, beginning to find solutions. And then around about the 18th, 19th, we have the Sun square to Jupiter and the Sun square to Mars. They will both be in Leo, so Mars and Jupiter will both be more or less conjunct at that time as well. That's going to bring very, very direct, possibly even a little bit controlling assertion, creativity. But the Sun and Jupiter, it's kind of a little bit egotistical when it's in a square like that. With Mars thrown into the mix, the ego's got in control. I think this could definitely suggest that a particular world leader is going to be up to something around that time. Their ego's a little bit out of control, out of balance, and maybe needs just a little reining in, possibly. But I'm sure we'll experience it somehow. And so around about the 22nd then of November, the Sun moves into Sagittarius. And this is a sense of, there's a sense with Sagittarians, they're usually pretty good at coping alone, going alone, the lone wolf. Sometimes they have a spiritual nature which is always able to see the positive side, or make a joke about anything bad that's happening. So it's almost like just like, I want to do like a Cartman impression, like, screw you guys, I'm going home. There's that sense in this point of like November where it's like, you know what, screw it, let's just start over, I'm going home, I'm doing it again, I'm doing it my way. There's that sense of, like with doing it my way, I guess, with that like Mars, Jupiter, Sun. So I'm doing it my way. So there's a sense of freedom as well, because Saggies, like, they don't tend to follow rules too well. Sometimes when they're being restricted by rules, they're kind of off on their own thing. So then on the 24th, there is a full moon in Gemini, and that is going to just bring some completions to something. And Mars, just after that, moves into Virgo. It's going to bring some sort of clarity, definitely, towards actions and what's been done, why certain actions need to be taken. It's very grounding and earthy as well. And there's a sense of healthcare and compassion. So like, if there is an issue with like health around people at that time, this is some sort of action around healthcare, setting something in motion to take care of people. On that 25th of November, it could be if that's what's required at that time. And then like with this whole, like with Mars being already in its like retrograde pre-shadow, there's a sense that whatever this action is that's being taken as it steps into Virgo, it's going to need to be reaccounted. There's going to need to be a sense of more clarity of why it's been done. There's something more likely to come up. So there is then Venus sextile to Jupiter, and that's pretty nice. So we end the month of November a little bit better than we probably started. And what's probably gone on is probably been almost like the last straw, where we're just like, you know what, I'm done, I'm out, I'm going to just do my thing. And I think there's a sense of positivity around that, a sense of freedom to just go, you know what, it don't matter anymore, I'm going to just go be happy and do something positive and do me. So yeah, that opportunity between Venus and Jupiter right at the end, I just think, it gives a little sense of hope. And I think especially as we then move into 2027, I think there is an improvement definitely to come. So a little bruised and bedraggled, we make it through to December, the final month of 2026. And it's a big one. We really do end on a big note. Very busy, very manic, very crazy. Lots of issues around like Mercury and Mars, it's like everywhere. It's like communications, anger, aggression, assertion, pushing forwards, taking action, having something to say about it. It seems to be like a non-stop theme for December. Starting around about, so what do we have at the start? There's a Mars-Uranus square around about the 4th of December. And this is going to play out through the Mars retrograde. So the Mars-Uranus square around about the 4th of December. And this replays on the 20th of February. And there is an eclipse as well. It's like 2027. So this is big. And like Mars and Uranus, it's like dynamite. It's like explosive in a very sudden and dramatic way. With also this like Mars retrograde being in sort of Leo, that's very dramatic. If there's any drama, it's going to be in Leo. And I know at this point Mars is in Virgo, but it's going to go back through the signs. And then there's this like Uranus in Gemini, which is very vocal in what it wants to say. A bit like Angel, the doggy right now. Shh. Apologies about that. She seems to be rather noisy this morning. So there is this sense of this Mercury-Mars square. It plays out a few times. Like the 9th of December, I think. It plays out all the way through to February. Like I was saying, it can be explosive, but like it's almost like a lot of anger and a lot being said, a lot of protests possibly, with Uranus and Mars and Mercury and everything going on. There's this like Uranus can be storms and seismic activity and shake-ups. It can be things like nuclear as well. I mean, I don't think there's a chance of that. This looks more sort of anger and vocal and people sort of standing their ground. I think it's going to bring a lot of people out and into like together. Mercury, so around about the 4th, Mercury is square to Jupiter, Mars is square to Uranus. It could be volcanic. I mean, it could bring something out into the air, so it could cause problems around transport. Say if there was an ash cloud, for example, it could be that type of thing. It could be quite fiery and explosive, so it could be volcanic. Venus moves back into Scorpio to complete that final part of her Venus retrograde cycle, where she goes back through the signs forward. Saturn stations direct, so Saturn's direct, and that usually brings about a lot of assertion of rules and regulations and authority taking charge over a situation. And Mercury is trine to Saturn at that point, so that would definitely bring up some sort of communications about some sort of authority or like something being put in place to control something at that point. Jupiter goes retrograde, and so for those people who have Jupiter already retrograde in their natal chart, this is a time of really making your own look and getting out there and like creating those opportunities for yourself. For those where they don't have, Mercury is already direct in their natal chart and they don't have a Jupiter retrograde. For those who don't have a Jupiter retrograde in their chart, this can be a sense of just feeling like all the opportunities and the look and everything sort of like gone away. It can feel a little bit negative as well, like the positivity in seeing like the positive side of situations is sort of lost as well. It feels a little bit of a downer of a time. So there is this sense of you need to go out and make your own sort of do something that's going to be enjoyable for yourself as well. Plan something ahead. Mercury squares Mars, Venus squares Pluto again, that we had previously in the previous months of September and October. So there is something being brought to light. There's things being said. There's issues being brought up. This could be arguments, relationships that have broken down, that kind of thing. and just the solutions and trying to fix those. The Sun is trine Jupiter, so there's action being taken, which is positive, which is going to then, it's seeing people having to take their own leadership around the matter. And the Sun moves into Capricorn on the 21st, which is the solstice. So there is this important time. The Sun's starting to return. There's a sense of optimism and possibility. But it's just not an easy December at all. Mars moves into Libra, and then it will go back through. There's like a Mars is opposite Saturn as well, so there's this. It's almost like angry at authorities. There's anger building and action being taken, but it's like opposing the authorities. It's opposing Saturn. It's opposing the governments and those in charge in some way. Mercury is trine Jupiter, brings a lot of communication, a lot to be said, a lot of people as well. It can be quite peoply. So yeah, I just think there's a sense of almost like there could be in certain countries, it won't be the whole world obviously, there could be quite a lot of protests around this time, and a lot of people, maybe even strikes, and people just really expressing their annoyance towards situations. Mercury also moves into Capricorn, and that is going to bring some it's just about organisation, isn't it, and clearing things up, working hard. And then the Sun is square to Saturn around the 29th. So yeah, we move forward. Just to clarify the dates of the Mars retrograde, which doesn't really happen until 2027, but the shadow period has already begun at the start of December. The Mars retrograde begins around about the 11th, 2027 at 10 degrees of Virgo, and moves back to until the 2nd of April, where it gets to 20 degrees of Leo. So it goes from 10 degrees Virgo back to 20 degrees Leo. So it goes back 20 degrees. And then the pre-shadow finally ends. The pre-shadow began around about the 5th of November this year. But then it will carry on then through to possibly even sort of like May, June time in 2027. Feeling the sort of effects of that. But yeah, there's it's just quite a big ending to a year, which I think the change between 2026 and the change between 2025 is 2025 began with those personal planets in retrograde, with the Venus, Mars and Mercury all in retrograde. So it was almost like we got our slap arse before we started out the year, and we started off the year on like on a bad foot almost. We're having to sort of claw our way back. 2026 has a sense of more possibility and positivity during the year, the start of the year, and through the first 9 months. It feels like something's moving forward. And then that last quarter, so from sort of like September, October, November, December of 2026, there's a sense of just having that slap back down. We're back to sort of going backwards. The everything's sort of falling apart again. But then there's more light at the end of the tunnel when we move into 2027. Things are moving forward. It's just the to-ing and fro-ing and the way the seasons move, isn't it? So it's going along okay. There's potential with 2026 that we hit the ground running a little bit more than with 2025, and we actually make that progress earlier on in the year, particularly from March onwards, I would say. Once we get past that, once we get into like the astrological year, like once we got into that Aries season, we're really going for it. We're very much independent. We're not bothering so much about the world around us and the governments and the politics and all that sort of nonsense. We've kind of lost faith in that in some way, and we're moving forward in our own sort of our own path. it's just that towards that later part of the year, it's almost like it's starting to, the world around us is starting to have more of an impact upon our personal life, and we're then having to take action and readdress certain matters. Okay, thank you so much if you've listened to me rambling on for this amount of time. I apologise how long this has been, and I apologise for the doggy's noises all the way through as well. But thank you very much. And the sniffles and the coughs and all that rest of it as well. Thank you so much for listening. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed some of the information that I've shared, and also wishing you all the best for 2026. May you have a great year. May you be able to navigate the astrology. Some of it's going to be pretty wild, particularly at the start of 2026. So once you're through the worst of it, you know, it should get easier and much better. Yeah, Happy New Year.